that any better? Good morning, everybody. I'll call to order the Business Management Committee meeting for Thursday, October the 24th, 2024. And before we get to the agenda, I would appreciate it if a colleague could make an announcement while we're being viewed by the public about two recent staff assignments that we are all aware of, but I thought the public ought to know. So, colleague.
Thank you, Jim, and good morning, everyone. I would just appreciate you joining me in applauding two folks that have stepped into some interim leadership roles here at the authority. So beginning with our Chief Administrative Officer, Ms. LaShonda Dawkins. LaShonda, just raise your hand. And our Chief of Staff, Mr. Stephen Parker. Stephen, right there. I want to thank both these individuals that come well established and well equipped to perform the functions they're in, and thanking them for stepping in on an interim basis to keep this organization moving forward. So thank you both.
Thank you, colleague. The first item on our committee agenda is approval of the September 26th, 2024 Business Management Committee meeting minutes. Entertain a motion and a second for approval of those minutes. Okay, properly moved and seconded. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? And let's please vote. The resolution passes and the minutes are approved. Item number 2 on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the modification and contractual authorization for the Trapeze Master Agreement, RFP P34149. Mr. Tyson Morris, Assistant General Manager, Technology and Chief Information Officer. Tyson.
Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and other members of the Business Management Committee. Can you all hear me all right? Okay, just making sure. I'll check on it after this. My name is Tyson Morris. As you mentioned, I'm the AGM CIO of Technology. I'm here to present resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for Trapeze Maintenance and Support P34149. The Technology Department is seeking permission to renew the sole source Trapeze maintenance and support contract for 4 years with Trapeze Software Group in the amount of $14,463,221 for fiscal years 25 through 29. The purpose of the renewal is to continue licensing, maintenance, and support of the 20-plus software modules owned by MARTA, which are fully utilized by the bus and rail operations and the planning departments. To provide context, I'm going to try another analogy for y'all. For Trapeze, look no further than the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. As you know, the conductor ensures that every instrument plays harmoniously, coordinating different sections to produce a unified and smooth experience. The conductor adjusts the tempo, volume, and timing, responding to real-time dynamics to avoid discord or chaos. Similarly, the Trapeze Intelligent Transportation Management System acts as MARTA's transportation maestro. For further context, Trapeze has been in place at MARTA for over 10 years now. It provides numerous modules that allow us to manage our bus, mobility, and rail operations by providing data and tools for scheduling, dispatching, and vehicle tracking. It also optimizes routes, monitors fleet performance, enhances communication between drivers and dispatchers, and support MARTA's customer service. Lastly, Trapeze integrates with multiple customer-facing systems such as GTFS, which provides scheduling data to external partners like Google, the current CAD AVL software, the mobile notification system, the reduced fare system, and the MARTA on-the-go application. I want to express to the board that the Department of Technology is committed to reevaluating many of MARTA's legacy applications, and we'll be assessing newer solutions as part of the continued digital transformation journey. In regard to Trapeze, many of the modules I'll reference today are standalone applications, so we plan to use this contract's life cycle to further assess and potentially implement newer alternatives. Lastly, it should be also noted that MARTA will have the option to decommission modules during these 4 years as more modern solutions are identified. These are just some of the Trapeze modules that are included in our contract that we use day to day for these operations. These include Transit Master Bus Ops Console in the upper left, EAM Work Management Portal in the upper right, Blockbuster Run Cutting Module in the mid left, Info Agent Trip Itinerary Module in the mid right, and the DriverMate Driver app in the lower left. Under financial considerations, the current contract value for the years 2014 through 2024 was $27,585,422.60. This was inclusive of $583,095, which was funded from the GM contingency and was approved in May 2020. Today, the additional funds are being requested in an amount of $13,077,351.34. An audit was conducted and found the price to be fair and reasonable. While unsubstantiated in the audit, the Department of Technology has included an estimated allowance of $1,385,869.66 that will be designated towards the purchase of additional licenses and training as needed during the life of the 4-year renewal. Together, this increase of $14,463,221 brings the total contract value to $42,048,643.60. This is funded with 100% operating funds from the approved FY25 through 29 fiscal year budgets, and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion did not sign a DBE goal as the single source, as this is a single source procurement. In conclusion, the Department of Technology kindly requests the Business Management Committee recommend the approval of resolution authorizing the modification in contract for maintenance and support for 4 years for the Trapeze Master Agreement in the amount of $42,048,643.60. Thank you. Now I return the floor to you, Mr. Durrett.
Thank you, Mr. Morris, for that presentation. I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution. Properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Pond.
Quick question. The 1.3 plus million was unsubstantiated with the internal audit, so how is that handled?
Yeah.
The rest of the money?
It's a good question. This was something that, as we have, 4 years to continue to nurture this application, we do realize with growth and everything else, this is an optional 1.3 million. So we don't necessarily have to use it, but we would be remiss if we didn't include this here, so we didn't have to come back to the board and ask for more money. So it's optional. Not saying we'll use it all, but we wanted to include it in this presentation just in case.
Yeah. And the second question, this is a long-term, very complicated technology, but
It is.
is there somebody else out there that can do the same thing, or is this one of these software pieces that you're held hostage because they're the best of the best?
It's a good question, right? So whenever something's been in place for 10 years and then you're asking for another 4 years, it calls to question, are we dedicated and locked into this technology? There are few players in this space, and we have had contact with them, and including this morning, around looking for continual, more modern solutions. So it is ingrained in the operations and planning effort that we do have here on a day-to-day basis at MARTA. So it's very complicated, but yes, there are fewer other vendors out there that do similar things, and that's what we commit to y'all, that we will we'll choose the right solution for MARTA for the long term. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you for the question now. Seeing, Rod, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Go ahead.
Yes. I know that we've had this software for quite a while. So is it performing well? I guess because we're talking about extending it further.
I don't know if that's a loaded question or not. With any application, this is hosted internally. We manage the uptime of it. And I would say it has lasted us the lifetime for a reason. Are there improvements that we can continue to do over the 4 years? Absolutely, and we'll explore those, right? It's not necessarily replacing one with another, but how do we nurture what we have? So I know Trapeze has probably been in front of y'all for multiple times and may be sick of hearing about it, but we wouldn't renew it if it wasn't working for us.
And then, and that leads me to Mr. Pond's concern about us considering doing new RFPs to position ourselves so we can look at other technology. And if we continue to renew a contract where we don't give that opportunity, then I ask the question, are we really tied to doing this without any choice? And I'm hoping that we're not, but I just hope that we ought to consider looking at some other services that can deliver what we're looking for. Is this something we just need to not continue to do if we don't give the opportunity to look at some new players in this space?
Understood. And that's what we're committed to doing. That process takes some time, and so that's why we've committed over these 4 years and as soon as possible to bring forth new solutions for this. And in the meantime, we'll be continuing to upgrade and modernize some of the things because their technology has evolved as well that we're not taking advantage of now. So we can, like I said, make do and improve what we have. But we need a little time to make sure that we're exploring and doing the right due diligence when it comes to looking for new solutions.
And this also serves as the mobility service?
Yes, it does have the mobility pass module within it. That is one of the first ones that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing that we have no further questions, I'll call for the vote. Rod, have you voted? There we go. Resolution passes. We will take this to the board next meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morris. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for risk management information software as a service, RFP P44741. Jonathan Jennings, Director of Risk Management. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Can you hear me? I guess. As long as y'all can hear me, I'm good. Okay. Well, good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Hurley, Mr. Greenwood, and members of the committee. The resolution before you today is a request for modification of the contractual authorization to the Risk Management Information System Software as a Service Contract P44741. The purpose of my presentation is to provide you with a brief overview of the system, the reason for the extension, and the cost to extend the contract. The current system, Origami Risk, is a cloud-based risk management information system that risk management uses to handle all liability and workers' compensation claims filed against the authority. Origami is also used by other areas within the authority, including legal, safety, human resources, and operations. At varying frequencies, both daily and weekly, the system imports and exports significant amounts of data to multiple outside partners and agencies, including the authority's Workers' Compensation Managed Care Organization, or WCMCO, the Center for Medicare Services, or CMS, the Georgia State Board of Workers' Compensation, as well as the internal stakeholders previously mentioned. To enable the critical transfer of information, several platform integrations between the WCMCO and Origami Risk were necessary. To complete multiple interfaces and other integrations between the two systems required significant man-hours and costs during the implementation of Origami Risk. The contract with Origami Risk runs through December of 2024. As the business processes of these two vendors, Origami Risk and Amerisys, the WCMCO, are highly integrated, it is in the best interests of the authority to align the procurement processes on a similar timeline to manage any potential changes in contractors to avoid significant disruptions to time-sensitive processes. It is my recommendation that MARTA modify this contract and extend the term until April of 2025, allowing both contracts, Origami Risk and the WCMCO contract, to terminate at the same time. Requests for proposals for both services are out on the street now, and the evaluation and award processes will be completed before April of 2025. The current contract value is $1,040,429.25. Additional funding for the 4-month extension is $77,577.50, for a total contract value of $1,118,006.75. I respectfully request your approval of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings. I'll entertain a motion and a second to approve this resolution. Properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions about this resolution? All right, then I will call for the vote. Resolution passes. We will take this to the board at our next meeting. Thank you very much, Ms. Jennings.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a briefing. Our fiscal year 2025 first quarter financial highlights and financial performance indicators. And Greg Patterson and Chetan Agarwal will both present this briefing. Greg?
All right. Good morning. Thank you, and good morning, Chair Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and members of the Business Management Committee. It is my pleasure to present.
If you would just pretend like you don't have a microphone in front of you.
Certainly, that's not a problem for me. It's my pleasure to present MARTA's financial highlights for the quarter ended September 30th, 2024. We'll open up with the operating budget highlights for the quarter. Okay, starting out with the summary performance, MARTA budgeted operating sources of $166 million. That includes the net revenues and the prior year carry forward. Our actual revenue was $2.8 million favorable for the quarter, and our net expenses were budgeted at $166 million, but ended the quarter at $22.9 million unfavorable to budget, largely driven by third-party liability expenses, which you will see in the detailed breakdown. The net impact of this was an unfavorable variance of $20.1 million for the first quarter. Moving on to the detail of this, I'll start with the favorable revenues. MARTA continues to benefit from a positive sales tax revenue. That's offsetting our unfavorable results in passenger revenue. Sales tax is favorable by $3.3 million, while passenger revenues are unfavorable by $1.8 million. In the case of sales tax, MARTA continues to benefit from a robust local economy and the impact that inflation has on prices. In the case of passenger revenue, MARTA is suffering from a continued combination of fare evasion and an increase in what we think are technical issues with our fare collection equipment. I'll go into a little bit more into that when we get to the key performance indicators for rail ridership. With respect to year-to-date expenses, salaries and wages are favorable by $6.8 million due to higher than forecasted position vacancies. And that's also the primary driver of our favorable benefits of $3.8 million year-to-date. Now, overtime is unfavorable by $2.7 million due to a combination of absenteeism and ongoing vacancies and turnover. Contractual services are $2.6 million favorable to budget. This was driven by underutilized external contract employment, software licensing fees, targeted cleaning contracts, and professional services. Total materials and supplies are favorable to budget by $1.8 million, and that was driven by lower than forecasted cost for fuel and parts. And then our largest hit to expenses is the other non-labor. That finished the quarter $24.8 million unfavorable, and that was due to a sharp increase in our third-party liability expenses. Finally, capital cost allocation was unfavorable by $10.3 million. I've discussed this before, but that deals with the progress we make on specific capital projects, as well as some of the vacancies in capital program and the coding of timesheets to charge direct charges to projects. That will then drive the indirect charges to hit there as well. If we don't have enough of that, it doesn't carry over onto the capital program. Moving on to financial performance for the month of September. Revenues were favorable by $4.8 million, and expenses were unfavorable by $10.9 million. The net impact of this was $6.1 million deficit for the month of September. Breaking this down on the revenue slide, sales tax was favorable by $3.6 million, same ongoing reason, the great economy and the impact of inflation. And I'll also just note that other revenues was favorable by $1.8 million, and that was because we had budgeted receipt of our alternative fuel rebate to be a little later in the fiscal year. We were able to collect some of that earlier than expected, so that's why you see a positive performance there. On the expenses side, salaries and wages are unfavorable to budget by $1.1 million, and that is primarily due to the difference on how salaries and wages were budgeted versus how they were accrued for the period. On the budget side, we simply budgeted more on the timesheet period, whereas the accounting side will record the actuals based on the actual day it hits. So that's the difference you see there. And then overtime continued to be unfavorable due to the ongoing vacancies and absenteeism that we see there. Other non-labor expenses were unfavorable to budget by $7.4 million due to the third-party liability expenses, and capital charges were unfavorable by $3.3 million due to lower than forecasted direct and indirect expenses on capital projects. Moving on to ridership key performance indicators. For passenger revenues through the first quarter, we saw better than last year's performance in July and August, and we actually dipped below last year's performance in September. All months so far have fallen below our revenue forecast for the year. Moving on to bus ridership, however, we are meeting or exceeding our ridership expectations, which is good news. Right now, September ridership of 3 million unlinked trips matched the forecast and exceeded the prior year by 300,000 trips. Rail ridership, however, is a slightly different story. As you can see here, the way the data is recording the ridership is below prior year and below our forecast. In discussing the impact internally, we do not believe this is reflective of true ridership. We're investigating some potential errors in our fare gate system. Broken fare gates can be causing extended delays in our system's abilities to record and report ridership and appropriately draw down revenue in some cases as well. We're still investigating this, so I don't have a whole lot of conclusions to provide yet, but we're digging into it. With that, I'll hand the presentation over to Mr. Chetan Agarwal for a presentation on the capital highlights, and I'll stand by.
And Chetan, let me apologize for mispronouncing your name earlier.
It's completely okay. Thank you, Greg. Good morning, Chair Durrett, Ms. Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and other esteemed members of the Business Management Committee. My name is Chetan Agarwal. I'm the Assistant General Manager for the Centralized Program Management Office, and I'll be presenting the capital highlights for the quarter ending September 30th, 2024. The chart on this slide shows the cumulative budgeted cash flow projection for MARTA's 3 programs, which are the State of Good Repair, More MARTA City of Atlanta, and More MARTA Clayton County. The committee members may recall that historically we've used a linear distribution model to project our cash flows across the fiscal year budgets. In other words, if the fiscal year budget for a project were to be 120 mil, using a linear distribution model, the monthly expenditures per month would be estimated at $10 million. I'm pleased to inform you that we have now implemented a rigorous mathematical model to more accurately represent our cash flow projections. We did this by integrating our schedule information with the budget categories for all the capital projects. The different budget categories do have different cost distribution functions. What I mean by that is construction costs are typically distributed using a normal distribution function. In the case of vehicle procurements, the payments could be tied to achieving certain milestones, like the issuance of a work order, the delivery of certain vehicles, etc. The chart further illustrates the size of the 3 programs. The State of Good Repair program is approximately 550 mil, which is about 72.5% of the overall portfolio. The More MARTA City of Atlanta represents about 22.5%, which is about 171 mil. And the Moore MARTA Clayton County represents about 5% of our entire portfolio. This next slide shows a histogram of the monthly budgeted cash flow projection. From this chart, you can see that the monthly cash flow projection for the State of Good Repair program for the first quarter of FY25 was approximately 15 million each for July and August, while it was approximately 30 million for September. This represents a total spend of approximately 59 million for Q1. Similarly, cash flow projections for the next 3 quarters are approximately 25%, 35%, and 30% respectively. This slide shows the sources of funds and the utilization of the funds for the State of Good Repair program. Starting with the sources of funds, we show that our beginning balance was approximately 86 million against a planned or budgeted value of 10 million. This is because we had a spillover of funds from the prior fiscal year. We show realized sales tax revenues of 62 million against a planned or budgeted value of 59 million. Pardon me. We realized a federal state revenue of 4.5 million against a budgeted value of 22.6 million because a couple of our projects did not progress at the planned rate. You may recall that we realized federal and state funds as reimbursements after work is performed on eligible capital projects. Other revenue was realized at 750K against a budgeted value of 500K. The usage slide shows the SGR program segmented into FTA asset categories. Overall, for the SGR program, we spent 47 mil, approximately 80% of the projected 59 million for the quarter 1 of FY25. For facilities and station, we spent 9.8 million against a planned value of 20 million. For maintenance of bay, we spent 300,000 against a planned value of 2.2 million. For the non-asset category, we spent 6.8 million against a planned value of 15.8 million. For systems, we spent 3.1 million against a planned value of 14.2 million. For vehicles, we spent 27 million against a planned value of 7 million. To service our debt, we incurred a spend of 32.4 million against a planned value of 38 million. This slide shows the performance of the top 10 projects for the State of Good Repair program. The first project on our list is the CQ400 new rail car procurement, and I'm pleased to inform you that the procurement of the rail cars is progressing well. The committee may recall that due to global externalities, we had issued a change order of approximately 57 million to Stadler before our quarterly Q1 budget of FY25 was adopted. You may recall that we paid 25 million to Stadler in FY24, and we paid about 25.7 mil in Q1 of FY25. We expect to pay another 7 million before the end of the fiscal year. The rail station rehabilitation program is progressing well. Work on several stations, including the airport station, Indian Creek, 5 Points, Brookhaven, East Lake is underway. The parking lot repair program is also progressing well, with construction underway at Chambly and Westlake. Construction at East Lake will commence in Q1 of calendar year 2026, once the work on the North Ped Bridge is complete. On the roofing rehabilitation program, work is underway to perform repairs on the dome station roof. Due to budgetary constraints, we think we will be slowing down the planned FY25 work on the parking lot pavement program to fund the remaining roofing projects in FY25. The Clayton bus maintenance facility, I will remind the committee members that this project has 2 phases. One is the demolition phase, and the second is the build-out phase. The contract for the demolition phase has been awarded, and construction is expected to start in November of 2024. the final design on the build-out section is progressing well, and we expect the design to be complete by the end of FY25. The security training and awareness program continues to make progress. Moving into the next slide, we show the sources of funds and the utilization of the funds for the More MARTA City of Atlanta program. Starting with the sources of funds, we show our beginning balance at $246.2 million against a planned or budgeted value of $243 million. We show realized sales tax revenue of $14.4 million against a planned or budgeted value of $13.7 million. We realized a federal or state funds revenue of $1.3 million against a budget of $13.5 million because the 5 Points transformation and MARTA Rapid Summerhill projects did not progress at our planned pace. Other revenue was realized at $3.8 million against a budget of $1.2 million. The usage section of the slide shows that we spent $7.7 million against a planned value of $15.5 million. As you know, the More MARTA City of Atlanta projects require a high degree of coordination with our business partners, including the City of Atlanta. I want to echo the sentiments that GM Greenwood expressed in an op-ed that ran in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution yesterday. While MARTA continues to be recognized as one of the top transit agencies in the country, MARTA can only serve its community to its full potential when we have the full support of our business partners. This next slide shows the performance of a key select projects in the City of Atlanta More MARTA program. The 5 Points transformation project, the project has experienced significant design delays, and we continue to coordinate with our business partners, including the City of Atlanta, for a move forward strategy. The MARTA Rapid Summerhill project has not progressed at the planned pace because we encountered several unforeseen site conditions, which include underground utilities, a basement, a parking lot, and 2 sets of railroad tracks. We are working with the general contractor to crash the schedule, and we will do everything in our power to meet the promised revenue start date of July 2025. Streetcar East Extension project, the board requested studies before the final design have been completed. A traffic study requested by the City of Atlanta is currently pending. On the Campbellton project, the project schedule is currently in the planning phase, and it also includes the Rapid Campbellton and the Greenbrier Transit Hub. The Q1 FY 2025 activities included advancement of the 30% design, submission of the FTA Capital Investment Grants, also known as the CIGs, for small starts, and advancing the NEPA process. The Cleveland Avenue Metropolitan Parkway ART project will be going out for a second round of bidding soon. We added the City of Atlanta requested scope in the bid package to entice a larger volume of external business partners. The forecast revenue start date of this project is July 2026. On the Clifton Corridor project, external outreach to stakeholders and the public ahead of advancing a recommended locally preferred alternative is on hold based on MARTA's executive action upon further coordination with the City of Atlanta. On the Bankhead project, the final design is underway. On this next slide, we again show the sources of funds and the utilization of these funding sources for the More MARTA Clayton County program. Starting with the sources of funds, we show our beginning balance at $258.8 million against a planned value of $246.9 million. We show realized sales tax revenue of $8.8 million against a planned or budgeted value of $8.4 million. We didn't realize federal or state funds revenue because the Clayton O&M facility did not progress at the planned pace. Other revenue was realized at $3.8 million against a budget of $2.5 million. The usage section of the slide shows that we spent $500,000 against a planned value of $6.8 million. This next slide again shows the top projects by expenditures for the MARTA Clayton County program. On the MARTA Rapid South Lake project, the project is currently in the planning phase. The FY 2025 Q1 activities included submission of the FTA CIG for small starts and advancing the NEPA process. The Clayton SR54 project is currently in the planning phase. The Clayton bus maintenance facility, again, as referenced in the SGR section, the project is paid for in an 83-17% split between the state of good repair and the MARTA Clayton County program. The Justice Center Transit Hub project is progressing well. The reason why we see such a big discrepancy in the actuals and the budgeted value is because the vendor is behind on the billings. And that concludes my presentation. Back to you, Chair Durrett.
Thank you, Chetan. A couple of things I'd like to point out. If you go back to slide number 18. There's a bust in your spreadsheet. If you go to the next slide. No, Clayton. That 92.8% at the bottom, I think that's flipped. It should be 7.2%, I think. If we've only spent 0.5 out of the 6.8 budget.
We'll correct that. Thank you for pointing that out.
I am reading it correctly, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, Carrie, I apologize, I'm gonna put you on the spot. I know that Chetan said that in order for us to deliver this program, it's not just MARTA. There are things that are beyond our control, and there are things that our partners need to be helping us with, and I'm not gonna be pointing fingers or anything. But when I see 53% for more MARTA capital in this first quarter, and I see 7% for Clayton in this first quarter, can we expect that those percentages will be increasing quarter over quarter as we can make progress?
Yes, absolutely. So on the MARTA Atlanta specifically, and as all of you know, the bulk of money that we spend on projects is construction. So when we have delays of projects going into construction, that's when we see much more of a hit to what our planned budget is. 5 points transformation with the start anticipated just before the fiscal year, we should have been in the throes of construction there. So our anticipated spend on that is indeed not happening, and we'll continue to see that one have a gap until there is a resolution on moving that one forward. On Summerhill specifically as well, as Chetan noted, we do have challenges with Department of Watershed Management. There were significant amounts of water lines that are feeds for individual households that were buried just below the surface of the roadway. And so the design had to be done by Department of Watershed Management. The specifications all needed to be updated. This has been a very long process for us to get the change order to the contractor. We now have that to the contractor, and we're asking the contractor to figure out, how do we bring back the dates, what is the impact to the schedule, and then how do we crash that schedule to keep the delivery within the same time frame. So there may be some stipulations that we're working through there with regard to detours or closures of segments of the road just to maintain our commitment, which is, in September of 2025, where we have a sunset date on our grant. So on the MARTA Atlanta side, you're going to continue. This will now, hit us for the entire year because those two major pieces. Let's hope that, Cleveland Metropolitan with some good favorable bids. We've got bus shelters available now, ready to go out there. We've got them stored. So hopefully that project will progress quicker than anticipated. On the Clayton South Lake side, or rather the Clayton side, there's delayed billings in place right now. So, we did do the CIG application for South Lake. We have not seen those bills come in from the consultant. And I know as surprising as it is, we do not get timely bills from our consultants. So our project managers do reach out. They do call them. They do say, hey, where are your billings? Because we are accountable to it. So we'll continue to catch up on those billings. The Clayton County Justice Center will be put out for bid relatively soon, so we'll see that work progress. So I do anticipate parts of the Clayton program to kind of catch up, but again, delayed billings is the primary reason why that one has kind of lagged behind.
Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Mr. Frierson.
I have a question on slide 13. I think might be, I don't know if this is 13. It shows the new cash flow methodology for capital projects. Yes. So help me understand the state of good repair piece of this. Is this a fund balance that we're looking at that we set aside for these projects? You say cash flow is not cash, but is it actually a fund balance that we set aside? Help me understand what that means.
Sure. What this really represents is our state of good repair program is $550 million for the entire fiscal year. And what this thing shows is how do we best intend to spend the $550 million across the entire fiscal year.
Okay. So it's allocation of expenses against that revenue. All right. Okay. And Greg, I did have a question for you also. You mentioned,
yes,
and this is further earlier in your presentation, maybe I should have asked you then, but it had to do with the expenses for the third-party vendors. What are we talking about? Third-party vendors?
You're talking about third-party liability
Yes,
expenses?
liability.
So that's where we have injuries where MARTA has to, or we set aside a reserve to pay for expected litigation costs or things like that. Yeah, that's what that is.
All right, I just want to make sure. I thought it might be something else. Thank you. That's what I need to know.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Pond.
Two questions on the capital program side. I noticed consistently across the board on the budget slide, my question is federal and state taxes were like $7 million versus $28 million, and I assume how do we get to that budget number for the state and federal revenues?
Yeah, I thought it was from Omar.
Okay, so anytime you're talking about a lag in the federal and state funds, it's because these funds, we have to first incur the charges, then we validate the charges we're participating, then we bill the feds reimburse us, and when they reimburse us, that's when you see the actual show up here.
So that's reimbursable.
Yeah, so these are just reimbursable expenses. We have to incur the eligible charges to then bill and be reimbursed on them. So typically speaking, when you see that the expenditures are lagging behind what we forecast, so too will the federal and state fund revenue lag behind because they're intrinsically tied to one another.
Okay. And the second question I have for you, you presented before, and one of the comments for the budget shortfall was people not building time on their timesheets to the projects. Is that a big number?
We actually just recently started investigating that, and it is bigger than we want it to be. As far as a percentage and total amount, I don't have it at the top of mind, but actually it's something that Ms. Roach and I have been researching together, and we pulled down a report.
Millions of dollars or 50,000? I mean, what kind of?
You can speak to it if you want.
I can't put a number on it. We didn't have a report before today for me to tell within my capital program how much people are billing. And as most of you know, in the private sector, you follow that very closely. So Greg and I have been working with our IT to get a regular report produced so that I have visibility for the capital team to make sure people are charging the projects that they're supposed to be charging. The message that we've been sending out to all of our management team is when you are signing those time cards to make sure that people are charging the projects that they are working on, as well as making sure the project managers know that people are charging their projects, right? So again, it's in-house time, and that in-house time also goes to our cost allocation that gets charged to projects. So if we are underrepresenting the hours we're spending on projects, they'll underrepresent the cost allocation that goes to those projects. So it kind of gets exacerbated. So we are working on that. It's a work in progress and an opportunity to improve.
Well, Kerry, you know this better than I do, but getting people to build time properly when they're working on 3 or 4 things is like pulling hen's teeth. And accounting is not going to fix that problem. I think you've already alluded to that. You've got to push that down to the managers of those groups.
Absolutely. And having in my hands a report that I'm able to turn around to folks and be able to point to, specific departments not charging to projects, it's going to help me manage that better.
Ms. Hardage.
Thank you. This may be a colleague, I'm not sure who needs to answer this, but this has been extremely helpful, and I appreciate, I know this is not easy to pull all these numbers together, so thanks to everyone that did that. But when we go back and look at the 5 Points project, it's been brought up in several different ways, but I know it's still on hold, and so I know it's costing us money every day. I know several months ago at a presentation when this all first happened, I think the number was thrown out, $15,000 a day if we held the contractor. Well, I can't imagine what that number is. So at some point, we have to make a decision what we're going to do with that project. I know that funding is coming out of more MARTA, but at the same time, we need to be good stewards about this. So do we have a plan as to what the next steps are for that?
We do have a plan. And first, I think that the best news about that is that the City of Atlanta and MARTA are closer than we've been before in terms of resolving this issue. I can say with full confidence that perhaps by the time this body gets together again, we'll be able to say that we're in a position to move forward on something that all sides can agree. So we're in the small strokes of what that negotiation is, and that's where we are.
Ms. Jones.
Thanks for asking that question, Frida. I have a follow-up to Al's question. Is there a time limit on seeking those reimbursements for the federal or state funds?
It's dependent entirely on the grant itself. If there's a grant that's approaching an expiration date, we tend to emphasize that, hey, that's coming close, and if it goes past a certain drop-dead date, then yes, the grant revenue is no longer there for reimbursement. It depends very specifically on the grant. Discretionary formula have different sunset dates and different timeframes. Generally speaking, they're very generous, and we have lots of time to resolve that. We typically budget them 3 and 4 years, sometimes in advance of where we are worried about the sunset date. But we do have a few that we are eyeing very carefully. One, of course, is on the Summerhill project.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see no other questions. Thank you very much for the briefing. This was really very informative. Thanks. Are there any other matters to come before this committee? All right, then I will call to close this Business Management Committee meeting. And what is the next committee? PCP is up next.
The Planning and Capital Programs Committee meeting for Thursday, October 24th, 2024. First item on the agenda is approval of the September 26, 2024 PCP committee meeting minutes. Could I get a motion and a second, please? It's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, can we please vote? Motion passes. Thank you all. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of qualification statements for the procurement of final design services for the Campbellton RAPID project, AE 50620. Mr. Larry Prescott, AGM of Infrastructure. Larry?
Good morning, Chair Blakey. Ms. Powers? Can you hear me now? It's trying to. Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Rocha, committee members, as stated, this, next slide please. This is a resolution authorizing solicitation for qualification statements, final design services for Campbellton. Oh, there it is, sorry. Now I missed the memo. Thank you. All right. Now, Campbellton RAPID project, AE 50620. There we go. Okay. Today, the Campbellton RAPID project is located in South Atlanta, Fulton County area. It is a bus rapid transit BRT service that will be running from the Oakland City MARTA station through the Fort McPherson area, the Campbellton Road area, the Greenbrier Mall area, and terminating at the Barge Road park and ride on the other side of I-285. It's a 5-mile long alignment that parallels the existing bus route 83, which will be incorporated into the BRT services eventually. It contains 9 stations at this time, as well as the transit hub located at Greenbrier Mall. The blue line is where we have dedicated lanes, bus only, and the purple area on the line there is the exclusive BRT flyover over I-285 between Greenbrier Mall and Barge Road. So this BRT service will be providing a center running BRT per the approved LPA, which is separate from public transit, and so it's 100% dedicated lanes for us. While we're doing this, BRT premium amenities will also include pathways, bike lanes, as well as safe routes to transit connections. So today, we're looking for a procurement of an architectural engineering services to provide final design on the BRT segments. Segment 1 is, we've broken this up into, is going to be the I-285 flyover that goes from Barge Road over to the Greenbrier Mall. We're currently at 15% concept, and that will go to 100%. Segment 2 is the Greenbrier Mall Transit Hub itself. Again, 15% concept, we're working in collaboration with the mall properties to get that to 100%. And then the remaining segment 3 is the Oakland City to Greenbrier Mall BRT alignment that is at 30% design going to 100% design. During the solicitation process, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion will assign a DBE percentages. With that, I'd like to request a resolution authorizing the solicitation of final design services for the Campbellton RAPID project AE 50620.
Thank you, Larry, for the presentation. It has been moved. Can I get a second? It has been properly moved and second. Any questions or discussion? Jim?
Larry, it's kind of hard for me to see that cross-section there, but I just wanted to make the point that as we are building facilities for bicycles and pedestrians, that it's becoming more and more evident with every passing day that protected lanes for both are extremely important, and I think the days of just trying to put a bike lane on the side of a road with a piece of paint between the bicycles and vehicles just no longer should be considered. So I just wanted to make that point. And I bet Segura's going to go rock.
Yes, sir. we are working with the city on alternatives.
Mr. Frierson?
Yeah, the flyover connection to Barnes Road, is that gonna be a dedicated just for the bus to get to that point?
Yes, sir.
It is, so nothing else will travel there except for the buses that are trying to get over the freeway to that?
Yes, we're going to do a bi-directional, so it's only one lane.
All right.
And so cut down on costs, so we have a bi-directional communication that will only go one way back and forth. There will be a parallel path, so that we will continue the path that's going to run along the BRT alignment. We will have a pedestrian bridge extension of that will run barrier separated across there, and then diverge down onto Campbellton Road as it gets over 285.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Ms. Jones?
Yes, I do want to second Jim's sentiment, and not just Jim's and mine's sentiment, but this is coming from people that use the city streets and want to feel safe while using them. And that protection is extremely important for those that are outside of those 2,000-pound vehicles and buses. And so where MARTA can participate in that, I think is extremely important. My question is about the design. When and where where's the board in the process as far as when we'll get an update on the design? So once we get that final design vendor, at what stage will we receive an update for review?
So this is for permission to solicit the final design services. In terms of updates, we don't typically bring an update on what the design status is beyond when we award the contract, but we are certainly open to meeting and presenting if you would like an update. Just to comment on the bike lane discussion, so bike lanes were always part of this. As most of you know, the cross sections for a project like this are established very early. And so those cross sections were established, and all of those areas in terms of right-of-way acquisition, the width of the sidewalks, all of those pieces come into play, including drainage. And this process started several years ago, and we are now in the middle of NEPA. The city has approached us to change the cross-section, which presents a major problem for NEPA. And so we are working with them to see what we can do. One of our biggest challenges on this project is the amount of right-of-way we are acquiring in, historically disadvantaged area. And so some of these areas, we are acquiring significant portions of residences and their front yards. And so we run a very fine line of a balance of what we're trying to do to keep the NEPA process moving, because all of the drainage has impacts on that, as well as, the right-of-way acquisition. And, again, trying to make sure the transit demands are met, make sure the bicycle needs are met, and kind of running between those different competing interests. So we are doing what we can. We are working with our designers to see what we can do. But we are really trying to minimize the impact to this community as much as we can. So we're working through it, and we're happy to bring an update back.
Thank you. And for clarification, thank you for willing to do that update, but for clarification, at what stage in the design process will we get to review the design? So if we're at 15% now, will it be 30%, 60%? I just don't want to get so far down the road that we're too far to be able to make any suggestions or recommendations.
So to be clear, and Larry had this on one of his slides, we are at 30% for the alignment. So that really does lock in our right-of-way limits. So changes to that now are difficult. And we did have this discussion with the mayor's office before we made the move with the PMT to lock in on a cost and a schedule. Again, we're trying to manage that, and we're trying to manage expectations as well. Per our process, there is no point that we bring to this board an approval of the design. So again, it would have to be something outside of that, but we're happy to do that for discussion purposes.
That's what I'm asking. I know we don't approve the design, but I think it would be good for this board on any project really to be able to look at that before they're just pop final design without any information or context beforehand. I think being able to see that progression would be helpful. Which is my feedback.
Ms. Jones, I'd like to add our IGA with the city for the More MARTA program. We have a milestone approval check-in at 30% of all design. And when we do that point, we always do a briefing for the board. And so as these two 15% go up to 30%, we'll also include the progression on the 30% design because it's parallel.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I definitely do agree with you. Mr. Pine.
Could you go back to slide 2? I think it's slide 2. When I look at that last segment, that's the flyover on 285, right?
Yes, sir.
That's going to be a tremendous part of the project dollar-wise.
Correct.
And I just wonder with the challenges of funding, would it make sense to break that in 2 phases? I just get concerned that we try to design that last little segment with all of that money spending to put a bridge over 285, that it will make funding the project in its entirety at one time very difficult, that's all.
As part of the concept, we actually did an early value engineering and brought in a separate value engineering review for this. The flyover transition from the Campbellton Road over to the Greenbrier Mall already had a flyover, a ramp, a bridge in it. So what we've done is transition. It's not a continuous flyover aerial structure the whole way. It goes over the roadways. It lands at grade in the Greenbrier Mall area where the transit hub will be, as well as the station. Then it transitions back to an aerial structure over I-285 and then lands back on the other side. So by bringing it down to a single lane, that also reduces cost. And combining the pedestrian bridge with it is a single unit. We've reduced the cost there. So to get the needs and meet the needs of it, we've gone ahead and done the best we could with bringing that down within the program budget.
Ms. Scott?
Yes, I have a question. I tried not to ask this question, but as a driver, I must. On slide 1, the left-hand turn, it would be making a left there where the bus lane only is. How would a person make a turn there in front of the bus lane, or is it further up, or what? Or is this picture as opposed to an actual design?
We have a standard BRT program criteria that we've established, and following the standard industry practice, that left-hand turn will have a separate transit and public signal system. So the bus will not be allowed, have a red light for itself while the turn light for the public will go. When the bus goes, that public gets a red light. So to avoid that cross-traffic intersection.
So the person would be able to turn left, but the bus would have a red light, or?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
We have transit signal prioritization that is all automatic and has a sequence built in with the GDOT programming for those signals.
Thank you.
Seeing no more questions, could we please vote? We're good. Resolution passes. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for electric vehicle equipment, RFPP P50610, utilizing the Federal General Services Administration, GSA, contract. Mr. Jonathan Weaver, Manager of Operations Technology.
Morning, committee members and Chair Blakely. I'm Jonathan Weaver, from Manager of Operations Technology. I'm here today seeking approval to purchase a 450 kW pantograph charger, which is a critical component of our EV charging project utilizing the GSA contract RFPPP P50610. So this project marks MARTA's first major investment in electrical bus charging infrastructure. In collaboration with Georgia Power and CTE, we are installing both depot and en-route chargers. Our en-route charger enhances the range of our electronic buses and provides valuable operational data. This is a picture of the actual ABB charger that we will be procuring in use. This pantograph, the actual pantograph is the arm that you see coming down there to the bus with the mast of the pantograph, which is actually mounted into the ground. This model is consistent with the chargers that will be used in our Summerhill BRT project, and standardizing charging manufacturers will simplify our charging management. This procurement is to purchase one charger with a 5-year service maintenance plan, and this approach maintains our EV project timeline without compromising our charging power. So finally, to proceed, we require your approval of the resolution authorizing the contract with SciPact LLC to purchase the ABB charger through the GSA contract at total cost of $614,873.90. And as just a reminder, we sent a letter of intent on June 20th expressing our intention to utilize the GSA contract. And I now return it to you, Chairwoman Blakely.
Thank you for that. Could I have a motion and a second, please? It has been moved and properly seconded. Are there any questions for Mr. Weaver this morning? None? Could we please vote? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you.
Next up, we will have a briefing. DBE presentation on planning, infrastructure, and construction contracts by Ms. Paula Nash, AGM of Diversity and Inclusion. Ms. Nash.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Blakely, Vice Chair Powers, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Rocha, and MARTA Board. I'm Paula Nash. I'm the AGM of Diversity and Inclusion. And today I am doing a presentation on the DBE participation update on the major planning, infrastructure, and construction contracts. The purpose of this presentation is just to be candid and transparent on the DBE participation for these contracts. So before we jump into the actual DBE participation, there are a few things that I want to bring to the board's attention. First is that the DBE participation that we will see goes from the beginning of the contract through August 31st, 2024. I also want to point out that we calculate DBE participation based on actual payments. So it's not the anticipated payments, it's not payments that are going through the process. The payments have to have actually occurred. And that's both the payments to the prime and the payments to the DBE firms go into the calculation. Another thing I want to point out is that we do not require that the primes meet the goal at different phases. We obviously want them to be moving steadily towards meeting the goal, but it's at the end of the contract when the obligation is there that they meet the goal. And lastly, there are some handouts that you all have that contain additional information that won't be in the presentation, but some additional information for you all to have. So we're going to start with the major planning contracts. First, looking at the bus stop amenities contract with Autoco Development. The overall DBE goal on that one is 55%. The DBE goal that's been achieved so far is 93%. I do want to point out that Audico is a DBE prime, and that's why that number is so high. Next, looking at our general planning consulting professional services contracts, there are 3 companies that have this contract. The DBE goal is 25%, and as you can see, HNTB is meeting the 25%. VHB is just shy of the 25%. They're at 24%. WSP is at 7%, but I do want to give an explanation for that or talk a little bit about that. As I mentioned earlier, we only count actual payments that have been made, and that date was as of August 31st, 2024. I can definitely say that DBEs are being used by WSP, and if we were to look at the payments that have been made since August 31st, as well as the payments that are going through the process right now, they would be meeting the goal at 25%. Next, looking at our infrastructure contracts, starting with the architectural and engineering consulting contracts, there are 3 firms there. The goal for those contracts are 10%, and as you can see, each prime is actually exceeding the goal on that contract. Looking at the CPMO contracts with Jacobs Russell, they are also exceeding the goal, which the goal is 31%, and they're at 35%. Station rehab is the next group we'll look at, and I do want to put a caveat out there that because this involves a number of work orders with station rehab, there's always a bit of fluctuation for these contracts. And I also want to point out that this particular contract is getting near towards the end term of the contract, which is February 2025. And there's a reason I'm pointing that out. As you can see, Axis and Chasm are meeting or exceeding the contract. And I want to point out Chasm Architecture is, in fact, a DBE prime, which is why that number is so high at 90%. I want to talk a little bit about the others, though. Arcadis is at 17%, and we do expect, because they are working on a work order, we do expect that once their payments get through, we will have an increase in that number. But the other 3, whose numbers are significantly lower than the actual DBE goal, they are not working on work orders right now. And of course, if they're not working on a work order, there is no payment that's happening to a DBE. So that is the primary reason that you're seeing the numbers where they are. Looking at the handout, you will notice that even the money that they have been paid is less than the amounts that the other station rehab firms have. And that's just because they haven't been given as much work. And that does cause a change in what we expect with their DBE participation if they're not getting the same amount of work. And there's various reasons that this isn't happening. Some because they have requested not to get any other work orders, and some have had a larger learning curve on our CMAR process. So there's various reasons that they don't have the same amount of work as the other groups. But that does reflect in the DBE goal. Continuing with the major infrastructure contracts, next, the system engineering services. The DBE goal is 31%, and as you can see, HNTB has very much exceeded that goal at 79% and should be commended for that. WSP is at 28%, so they're very close to the goal, and there are also payments that are going through the process that would have them meeting that goal. Looking at Summerhill BRT design services, the DBE goal is 15%. Kimley Horn is at 11%. We are working with Kimley Horn to help in getting that amount increased. Going to 5 Points Transformation, and this is the design part. The DB goal is 31%. SOM is at 12%. There are some payments being going through the process for this one as well, but I do want to point out that because this project started a little slow in the beginning for them, there were some work orders that they did that didn't have DBE actual work in it, so they're trying to make up the difference now. And then Clayton County O&M facility, the overall DBE goal is 15%, and STV is close to it at 14%. So now going to our major construction contracts, we'll start with the CMAR station rehabilitation. The actual goal is 34%. We have two firms that are very close in meeting that goal. They're at 32% each. And then we have one company, Reeves Young CERM, joint venture, that is at 12%. Again, if you look at the handouts, there is a major difference in the amount of work that Reeves Young's CERM has been given as compared to the other two firms, and that does reflect in the DBE goal. But at this point in time, we expect that they will be getting some more work orders, and that goal will increase. Elevator escalator rehab program with Schindler, they are meeting the 20% goal. Emergency trip station with Cleveland Electric is exceeding the 20% goal. They are at 26%. 5 Points Transformation, the CMAR part with Skanska is at 0% of a 26% goal, but that's because they are just getting started. The only thing that's happened so far with that contract is the preparatory phase, which doesn't have DBE in that phase. But as they start with the actual construction phase, this goal should go up. And we have been working very closely with Skanska to make sure that on their team they have DBE firms that are ready to go when the construction starts. And then that brings us to Summerhill BRT construction with Archer Western. The goal is at 15%, and they are exceeding it at 16%. So where are we performance-wise? 46% of the individual prime consultants are meeting or exceeding the assigned DBE goal. And I've pointed out a few there that are doing an exceptional job. I pointed them out as we were going through it. 23% are not meeting the goal, but we consider them to be in acceptable range. And acceptable range we consider to be within 4% of the goal. The reasons that they may not be meeting it is due to fluctuation in timing. As I said, the payments have to actually have gone through, and sometimes that may not have happened on the date that we picked, which was August 31st here, to do the report. We believe that those firms shouldn't have problems making up the difference. There are 31% that are not meeting the goal and that we consider to not be in acceptable range. And I should say that 31% is based on the numbers that you have in front of you. I have mentioned that a few of those will meet the goal, but of that 31%, the reason that they are not in acceptable ranges. Some are because the scope of work may have been changed on the contract, and I pointed one or two of those out. Some of it is just due to the work orders and what is going on with the work orders. But we are working with those firms and the ones that do have time left on their contract to try to make sure that they are doing what they need to do and that we are helping them get where they need to be to meet the goals. So what happens when we notice a deficiency? The first thing that happens is we have a system that sends out a deficiency notice. And this automatically happens monthly when there is a deficiency with one of our primes. The other thing we do is we require the primes to provide reasons to us of why they're not meeting the goals. There may be something going on that we're not aware of, and if we become aware of, we can help them overcome those things. So we ask them why they're not meeting them and see what we can do to help that out. If it persists that they're not meeting the goal, then we require a corrective action plan. And so what do we do to reinforce these actions? Well, at every opportunity that we get, we emphasize the importance of DBE participation. And this is both with the primes and with the DBE firms. So we take that opportunity. Some of the ways we do that is through our Inclusion Matters series, which is a series that we do actually with the primes, and there are high dollar primes, the ones with the larger contracts, where we sit down with them, we explain the DBE program, we also explain the business case of using diverse sub-consultants in an effort to encourage them to meet the goal. And I think that has had a big effect, because I can tell you the firms that have gone through this program, when they have questions, they call us now. And instead of kind of doing what they want, we hear from them quite a bit. The other thing that we do is the DBE Roundtable series, and that is with our DBEs. And we take a small group of DBEs, bring them in, and just listen from them. We want to hear about what is working with our DBE program, what isn't working with our DBE program. And through that, we try to make whatever adjustments we can make to help out those DBE firms. And then, of course, the semi-annual reporting that we do here to the board, we think has an effect as well, because these firms do realize, because we've told them, that we will be reporting this to the board on a semi-annual basis. So again, we try to just reinforce and emphasize the importance of DBE participation every opportunity that we get. And with that, concludes my briefing. I do want to mention that I will be coming back soon with a briefing on some of our operational contracts, because I know that has been mentioned in the past.
Thank you for that, Ms. Nash. Are there any questions for her today? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have a briefing, operational impacts for upcoming capital work, the Indian Creek Station Rehabilitation Pedestrian Bridge by Ramon Moultrie, Project Manager 2, and Greg Gafrida, Manager of Capital Communications and Engagement.
Good morning, Chair Blakely, Mr. Greenwood, and committee members. So this briefing is for Indian Creek train station rehabilitation for the pedestrian bridge installation, which will require suspension of rail service December 8th and December 9th, returning back to service December 10th. So more so the scope of work, to this briefing is for the pedestrian bridge connecting to Durham Park Road, from Durham Park Road to the plaza entrance of Indian Creek. This will help us retain patrons that we already have and possibly acquire new patrons. But that is not just the limit of the scope. Overall scope for Indian Creek will be the general station rehabilitation, also the police precinct, the traction power substation, parking lot paving, smart restrooms, upgrade to the telephone system, and a new escalator. So what we have here are pictures of the current progress within the station itself and the bridge itself. All the way to your left, top left-hand corner, you see the new lighting system that is installed at the station as of right now. We are sealing that ceiling also and cleaning it. The next picture that's in the middle is for the HPL panels that's being installed on the platform that goes all the way up to the concourse level. Picture that's to the right of that is the soundproofing panels that go up under the platform itself that quiets the trains as they enter and exit the station. The bottom left-hand corner is the dry ice cleaning of the ceiling. So that helps us preserve and protect the ceiling itself since it's made out of wood. The next one from that standpoint in the middle is the platform itself, the lighting that's there, and then the concrete design that transform from the platform, that goes from the platform itself to the concourse, then to the bus loop and the plaza. The next two pictures to the bottom right-hand side are the high pressure panel laminate panels that are there. They're on the concourse, as you can see, and then on the platform level itself. So everywhere that we have the 1980s blue turquoise brick, we're getting rid of that and having these nice panels that are there. If you look to the right, we have the progress of the bridge, the foundation, the piers that we are driving to install. One is on the south side, which is by the TPSS, the plaza entrance, and then the other two locations are on the north side of the property where we cleared out the trees. So the scope of work doing suspension of rail service. On this picture, the red bridge section 1, that's what we definitely need with this particular suspension of rail service. We'll be swinging the bridge itself. We'll have a laydown area, we'll have the crane that's out there, and once we take the tracks out of service for those 2 days, we'll be able to swing this bridge safely, set it, connect it, do the inspections, then from there do section 2 of the bridge, which will not affect service or anything like that, and then continue the build out of the walkway. The access road that you see there will stay there for our MOW operations group to where they can service the station and maintain it. And so with that, we'll be performing pre-installation checks and surveys, swinging, setting, and securing the bridge, then post installation checks and surveys. So why suspension of rail service required? Number one is safety. We want to keep our patrons' safety, our employees safe, and then our assets safe. So by doing that, that allows us to install this bridge and then continue the build out of the rest of the bridge. So the work cannot be performed during revenue hours, so hence the restriction of both tracks. So the proposed work for this plan, as you see, the diagram that's to your right are two yellow diagrams. Those are your footings where we're driving piles at right now, driving and drilling piles at right now. And then once we finish with that prerequisite work, that's when we'll swing the bridge, which will be encapsulated inside of the two red lines that are there. You see a statement that says wayside limits, but more so your track envelope for those who may be outside of MARTA. And so this proposed work plan will be creating a new end-of-line station for Kensington. So that'll be the new end-of-line blue line station. And so trains will stop there and then return back westbound, servicing HE Home Station. So bus operations and coordination with them, we're going to provide a bus bridge from Indian Creek to Kensington Station itself. We will have the parking lot open at Indian Creek. However, we're going to urge and push that patrons that's doing Lyft, that's doing a taxi, that's doing Uber, that they either park there or take their services there at Kensington. So the work schedule for Indian Creek Pedestrian Bridge, we're doing prerequisite work as of right now that started on July 29th. That'll go all the way to December 7th. And so that's getting the crane on site, building the actual bridge, assembling it driving the piles and setting the footings. So December 8th at 2 a.m., more so take the tracks out of service. That's day one. So the crane that's already there will then pick up the bridge, swing it, set it, and then from there we do our post checks and inspections, and we secure the site from that standpoint. Then we progress to day two, which is Monday, December 9th. After the bridge is already secured, we come back and do additional inspections, additional surveys to ensure that everything is good to go. If there are any findings, we then go from that standpoint and address those, then turn over the tracks back to revenue service Tuesday morning at 4 a.m. And at this time, I would like to transition over to Mr. Greg Jafrida.
All right, thank you very much. We're just going to talk through some of the service and communications plans here. The bus bridge will begin operating at the start of service on Sunday, December 8th, going from 4 a.m. Actually, I think it's 6 a.m. for the Sunday schedule, and then ending with the end of service on Monday, December 9th. So that would be early Tuesday morning. Right now, bus operations is planning to have 10 regular MARTA buses as well as 2 mobility buses that will be following rail headways. We will be installing wayfinding signage at both of the stations. Local bus service will not be changed, so we have 5 MARTA routes. That's the 24, 107, 111, 116, and 119, as well as Ride Gwinnett Route 70. On the screen, you can see the red line. It is a pretty straight shot. About 5 or 6 minute drive between Indian Creek and Kensington Station, so we don't anticipate any issues there. So one question is why we are doing this on Sunday and Monday as opposed to Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, December 7th is the SEC Championship game at Mercedes-Benz. Obviously, those kinds of special events, we generally try to avoid any kind of service impacts on those days. But to be safe, we wanted to compare ridership for the SEC Championship to a Monday when we generally have higher ridership. So you can see on the screen just for the last 3 years comparing SEC Championship ridership to Sunday and Monday averages. And you can see SEC is slightly higher than even the Monday average for those days. Of course, that can vary depending on who ends up in the game, which is still very much up in the air. If I knew the answer to that, I'd be in Vegas right now, but so we'll see what that looks like, but that's why we're doing the Sunday to Monday. So as far as our public messaging campaign, we're really focusing on the positive the benefits coming from this project. This is a part of the overall State of Good Repair program and the Indian Creek Station Rehab project. This new pedestrian bridge is going to bring new connections to the communities that are north of the station. It is going to connect to a future trail network that DeKalb County and the Path Foundation are planning. And of course, we have all of the other projects that our customers have been very patient with as far as new platform, concourse walls, furniture, outdoor plaza, lighting, public artwork, and landscaping. Just a reminder on the timeline for completion, we are looking at April 25 for the new bridge, and then the overall project will be completed by spring next year. So our key stakeholders will be our customers, those who start, end, and transfer their trips at Indian Creek. As far as our jurisdictional partners, it's mainly DeKalb County as well as Ride Gwinnett. And a few of the institutions nearby, we will be reaching out to our Georgia State University and Electric Owl Studios, which is just south of the station site. You'll be familiar with a lot of these same tactics that we've used for larger projects recently, including Airport and the Brookhaven Skip Stop. So I won't list all of those out, but one point on canvassing, we are going to be out canvassing in person at the station on Sunday and Monday to make sure we capture those customers who do ride on those days. So we will be out in the parking lot, flyering vehicles, as well as catching bus customers who are transferring, and rail customers. And as far as the preview signage will start being, well, actually I'll talk through that in the next slide. Here's the timeline for the campaign. We are looking at rolling out the digital elements of the campaign today following this hearing. So we would have website updates, social media, stakeholder email, and we will be scheduling briefings with our various stakeholders. We will be installing the preview signage starting next week at Indian Creek and as well as the eastbound platform at 5 Points. We will be doing the canvassing on the Sunday and Monday, December 1st and 2nd, the week before the impact, and then installing the wayfinding signage at Kensington and Indian Creek on the Saturday night before the impact begins. With that, take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that briefing. Are there any questions? Mr. Frierson.
Yes, I'm excited about seeing what's happening at Indian Creek. I think that is a great way to show what happens when we do some things in various jurisdictions that really highlight the MARTA's brand and what's happening in that space. And the riders are loving it. You know, I get a chance to talk to them because that's a station that I use quite a bit. So it's exciting to see the bridge come into play, and I've been watching the development. So I want to say thank you to your staff and the construction companies who are out there making it done in a safe way. One of the things I was curious about was the signage for when you're going to shut down the station. Is that going to be out on the Redan Road? Has it been thought about putting it out on the Redan Road as opposed to at the Indian Creek station? I know that you're going to have it there, but as people turn into the station, they need to know that it's closed, and then the decision may be, okay, let me go to Kensington before I even go up in here and park, as a way of letting them know.
Sure. So just to be clear, are you talking about, I guess, that main intersection entrance off of Redan Road? I'll have to take a look out there to see what kind of surfaces we have to work with. You know, if we don't have some sort of a fence or other vertical element that we can put a sign on, then we would probably have to sink something into the ground.
Okay.
We can do that. I will say, in order to capture drivers on a higher speed, higher volume road, you have to make it pretty big for them to really be able to read the sign. So we had not planned on putting something out there, but we'll go out and take a look at it and see what we can do. Okay. We are planning to have vinyl banners that are on the parking lot entrance gates off of Elder Lane, as well as when you come in off of the 285 off-ramp. So there will be signage for drivers on both sides of the parking lot, but we'll have to take a look at Redan. So, thanks.
Great. Thank you. And I am planning to take. I've been very intentional about taking some of the candidates that are running for some of the positions in the DeKalb County commissioner seats on a ride-along, just me and them together. And we're just going to ride the system. And we started in Indian Creek and having these discussions about transit and how it's important that they see what's happening, and in their partnership is very critical to what we're trying to do to expand transit. But this is a good example how we can just, to me, showcase what can happen when we start having a commitment to the vision to expand this transit system. So we want to say thank you. So.
Ms. Jones?
Are there any other anticipated closures for Indian Creek throughout this project?
Currently, not at the moment. Of course, there are unforeseen conditions or issues that may happen, and so, but currently not at the moment.
And I don't know if this is a question for you all, but this is our third station closure in the past year or so. So while you're doing messaging around specific stations, what messaging is out there regarding the need to close stations in general, and just how it relates to the state of good repair and what it means for riders?
So I think that is a great point, that we have this larger program that is having a lot of different customer impacts in different locations and different jurisdictions. I think we are doing regular social media on all of our platforms about providing updates on each of our projects. So that's Brookhaven, that's Airport, College Park, 5 Points. You just run down the list. I think we regularly provide those updates, but I think perhaps we need to think a little bit more about a campaign that's kind of tying them all together, and I think giving people an idea of what the kind of bigger purpose of this is. So I think let me get with our I guess, our team and an external affairs team and maybe come up with some ideas about how we can really celebrate the station rehab program and kind of put it in a larger context for our customers. Is that helpful?
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
And Ms. Scott.
Sorry. They pretty much covered, my question was about communication. And one of the methods of communication I would suggest would be Neighbor. The Neighbor app, to please get that information out there. In that area, a lot of residents have aged in place, and they use that system for hospital visits because it allows them to transfer, especially to Emory, and also to partner with the DC TV, the DeKalb County Television, and make sure that it's on their website as well.
Great. Thank you for those suggestions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Seeing no other questions or discussion, thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
And the last item on our agenda today is a briefing for the AT&T Utility Relocation Agreement by Mr. A.J. Joshi, Director of Expansion Program Management. Mr. Joshi.
All right, good morning. It is working. Okay. Good morning, Chair Blakely, Co-Chair Powers, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Rocha, and members of the committee. Today I will be, here we go. Today I will be presenting a project brief about the AT&T Utility Relocation Agreement that we have for Summerhill, the Summerhill Rapid project. And essentially, the purpose of this is to relocate poles along Hank Aaron because we are widening that roadway. So they will be doing overhead structure relocations as well as underground. I'll kind of go into quick scope. We are going to be removing AT&T owned poles and their associated guying at 15 locations. We are transferring some of their aerial infrastructure that's currently on Georgia Power poles back onto AT&T poles or new poles. We are going to be relocating underground utilities, assets that are in existing vaults along the right-of-way or along this project corridor, and so that will require some additional effort as well. And there are 84 AT&T manhole lids that are going to have to be brought up to grade. That is also going to need to be done as part of this effort. So we have been working with AT&T closely. They have been good partners. This is the first of these types of projects where we are trying to establish agreements. And so we've also established some expectations when it comes to breaking down their cost, which they've done so for us. So the estimated contract price on this is $713,614.88. And we're planning to move forward. This is going to be part of, this is within the guise of the master agreement between AT&T and MARTA. So we are doing this as a brief, just as a courtesy to kind of show this committee how we kind of move these things forward. And we'll be doing so more so in the future as well. Okay. And with that, thank you.
Are there any questions? Mr. Hunt.
I've got one quick question, AJ. Will this work be done before construction is done in that corridor? Concurrent.
We are trying to get, it's with the utilities, it's kind of difficult to nail them down on a schedule, but we are working closely with them, and we basically lay out things that we know are going to be coming to critical path or close to critical path, and we're just trying to work with them to make sure we get those assets out of the way. So we present information, and then we kind of wait for their response.
So my question is, with two contractors working in the same space, your contracts need to have some way, and I'm assuming you've thought through this, how to people start pointing, let me back up, people start pointing, thing is I'm not here in time, so you're delaying me, I want more money, those kinds of things. Change orders.
Yeah, so far we have been able to avoid those change orders because right now along the alignment there's plenty to do, right? So if we see certain trades are able to work within the corridor, we're giving them spaces to go. So south downtown, for instance, the change orders are going to be with Archer Western, right? So Archer Western is really going to be who we have our contracts with. When it comes to the utilities, it's a little bit of a different structure. We pay them up front, and then we await for their schedule so they can do their work. We allow Archer Western to work with the utilities. We do that on a weekly basis. and that allows them to know where we're going to be going, where we're headed to in the next 6 weeks. So we're doing 6-week look aheads, 3-month look aheads, 6-month look aheads. As we do that, we always have to have a mitigation plan. So far, we have not run into change orders specifically for those utilities. Now, shallow utilities, as Carrie had mentioned earlier in the previous committee, shallow utilities, we're going to have to work around those. Those utilities are sitting in our critical path right now. And so until we can have those utilities moved, it is something that we are trying to work with Archer Western. Inevitably, they're going to come back. If we're going to crash the schedule, there are going to be some impacts there. So we are working with them right now to see how we can minimize those impacts.
Maybe too late, but is there any way you could put AT&T's contract under Archer Western?
We could do that. That's actually how we're handling Department of Watershed Management, because Department of Watershed Management told us up front that they did not have enough resources to do the work in a timely manner or to be able to adhere to our schedule. So we have, as per our master agreement, we can do that work in lieu of them and then take that over. We have not done that with AT&T in this case because they have come back to the table and presented us a plan that we think is going to work, and it's not on our critical path, but when it comes to Department of Watershed Management, we did. And moving forward, I think it behooves us to do that more often because it does allow us to kind of control it with our own contracting team, as long as it's, it's a little bit more liability for the authority, but it depends on where you want to look at the liability fall. Yeah. Right.
I'm just pointing out if you have one contractor in control, you minimize your problems.
Absolutely.
No other questions or discussion? Thank you, AJ, for the presentation.
All right. Thank you.
Are there any other matters to come before this committee? Seeing none, this committee meeting is adjourned. Thank
Start the Operations and Safety Committee meeting. First item on the agenda is approval of the September 26, 2022 minutes. I'd entertain a motion and a second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? If not, can we please vote? The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for non-revenue vehicles utilizing the state Georgia contract, and that'll be led by Anthony Marr, the General Superintendent for Bus Maintenance. Anthony?
Yeah. Good morning, Chairman Pond, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Anthony Marr, General Superintendent of Bus Maintenance, and I manage our non-revenue fleet. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 2. This is for the award for a contract for the procurement of non-revenue vehicles utilizing the state of Georgia contract. In this discussion, I'm going to give you a short status of our fleet status, what's available on the state of Georgia contract and why we're using the state of Georgia contract, our vehicle replacement, our budget for the next 5 years. We're also going to cover some special service vehicles that will be purchased under this contract and the request. Looking at this is how our current fleet looks. As you see, the vast majority of our vehicles was purchased between 2016 and 2020. Some years we would purchase 100 vehicles. If you do purchase 100 vehicles in 1 year, in 7 to 10 years, you have to replace those vehicles, all at the same time. We have been reactive in the past, and we want to move from being reactive to a more proactive status, to where we replace the vehicles on a regular basis to better control the budget, to give them the equipment what they need on a yearly basis. This is all the 30-plus vehicles that are currently available on the state of Georgia contract. Just to give you how the state of Georgia contract works, the major manufacturers like Ford, Chevy, they break down between the different local vendors which vehicles they are allowed to sell, to the local state agencies. Highlighted are vehicles that we will be purchasing with MARTA's commitment into going green. The Chevy Lightning, we have 4 of those right now. Those will be very good for us. We'll be purchasing more of those, all electric vehicles. Ford Escapes, hybrid vehicles, and also new to the contract are some Toyota Camrys, the Nissan Leafs, and the smaller Ford Rangers. These are vehicles that have a smaller carbon footprint on the general public, and it's something that will help MARTA move forward and make sure that we are doing everything we can in our commitment to going green. In the bottom are some of the special service vehicles we'll talk about in 2 slides here. This details our budget for the next 5 years. With this, we'll be able to purchase up to 26 administrative vehicles and roughly 8 police vehicles. As you look at the budget from year to year, it's not consistent. You wonder why. It's 1 year we might spend $1 million, next year we might spend $2 million. Well, what we did, we took a very detailed look at every department. We just reached out to every department, say, what do you need and what can we do to make you better? What can we do to make MARTA better? How can we get better? And some departments say, hey, if I had a vacuum truck, that would be really great for us. If I had a pumper truck, that would be really great for us. If I had a new tow truck, that would be really great for us. Those vehicles are quite expensive, but the return on them is very advantageous towards us. These are some of the special service vehicles that we're talking about. I'd like to highlight the vehicle down at the bottom right. That is a vacuum truck that the facilities department requested. They've never had one before. This truck was $150,000, but with the purchase of this truck for $150,000, we was able to cancel a $500,000 per year contract that we had just for vacuuming out of water, whenever it rains really hard. Also, we will be purchasing some special vehicles for maintaining our tracks. With the new rail cars that are coming, there will be support equipment that's needed to make sure that we maintain the tracks in top condition, so we'll be able to, service the general public. With that, with this, we want to better streamline the procurement of vehicles. Now, with this, with 5 years, we will come back annually for a briefing, let you know how we're doing, where we're going. So we're not just getting a 5-year contract and you'll never see me again. But it's better control our budget with encumbrances is a big thing to make sure that we are spending the budget to where we can plan year by year by year so we know what we're spending to make sure that we're not having any negative impacts on the budget. And also, it will shorten the replacement time for vehicles. As much as I would love to say it doesn't happen, but running 4 million miles per year, we do have some accidents. The vast majority of them are not our fault. People, like to hit us. But if we do, an apartment does lose a vehicle, we're able to replace that vehicle very quickly by having this open PL. The total budget that we're asking for is $12,275,985. That's for a period of 5 years, utilizing the state of Georgia contract. And with that, I'll return it back over to you, Chair Pond, for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Could we have a motion and a second, please? We have a motion and a second, properly second has been made. Any questions? I want to point out you will spend this as needed. It won't be all at one lump.
That is correct.
Paid.
Yeah, it is from FY25 to FY26, they're a different amount, all around.
Any questions? Ms. Jones? Oh, Rod?
What do you all do with the old vehicles? Is there any revenue from the sale of the old vehicles?
Yes, our old vehicles, we either, if they are halfway decent, we sell them on public surplus. For the vast majority of vehicles, we do sell. We scrap them, pull apart. We do get revenue from that. I think, as I looked at it 2 days ago, in the last 3 years, we were able to recapture $106,000 worth of revenue that goes back into the general fund.
Mr. President? Yes, so these are vehicles that we purchased?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I know you mentioned that we have some vehicles that's between 2010 and 2015, like 33 vehicles. That's not that old, is it? In my eye. I mean, so these vehicles are paid for, they're on the road, they're running, they're operational. And so, in my thoughts, the longer we have them and not having to pay for new ones, the more we get out of the value of them.
Yes. Well, a lot of the vehicles that between 2010, we do have a very, as I say, a very unique environment with vehicles. We like to retire vehicles for age. A normal vehicle, we try to get at least 150,000 miles or 10 years out of it. But we are an operation company, doing 4 million miles a year, and there's things to happen to the vehicles. So sometimes we do have to replace the vehicles, a little bit sooner, but we do make sure every effort we can to get all our money's worth out of the vehicles.
Okay, I understand. And are some of these vehicles that's on this list, are these for utility vehicles too? Or these
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
yes, sir.
They're all kind of
vehicles.
Yeah,
it covers every department from the regular fleet vehicles to maintenance of way to our electrical department, our facilities department, that covers a vast host of all these vehicles.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Not. Okay. I'll call the question. Can we please vote? The motion passes.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a single-source contract for our cloud-based operating system, and that will be led by Lieutenant Felliston with the MARTA Police Department.
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Mr. Greenwood, and Mr. McKinney, members of the Operation and Safety Committee. My name is Ron Philistine. I am the commander of the Criminal Investigation Unit for the MARTA Police Department. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 3. This is a resolution authorizing the award of a single source contract for a cloud-based operating system, RFPP P50606. Acts on Futures, enhancing public safety through technology. This is their motto. Our core objective, as far as the police department, is to improve public and employee safety, enhance operational efficiency, develop and enhance crime reduction efforts. When something happens, we'd like to swiftly apprehend criminal suspects. We have several major events: the SEC Championship, college football playoffs, the FIFA World Club Cup, FIFA World Cup, and we've just been awarded the 2028 Super Bowl. In addition to those major events, we have our annual events, such as the Peachtree Road Race, the New Year, Peach Drop, Dragon Con, 4th of July, and Pride Parade. Acts on Futures will be able to help us to basically secure our system to make it safe for our patrons and employees. What is Acts on Futures? It is an operating system for a real-time crime center. What it does is integrate and manage real-time video and data from multiple sources. It enhances coordination between different departments. It can be police, rail, bus. It is a web-based platform. It can be viewed on desktop, laptops, and phones. It can be remotely monitored from any location. For example, if an incident was to happen now, we'll be able to log onto the system and see it in real time. It allows the police department to respond to criminal activities and incidents in real time. We currently have existing technology we are using, such as Genetec for CCTV for stations. We have license plate readers with Flock. We have the body cameras that every officer carry. We have drones. We have the solar-powered cameras in 20 different locations in the authority. And we also will be able to integrate this system with our CAD and report management system. So all the technologies that we are currently using will be able to bring under the umbrella of Futures. Why Acts on Futures? It centralizes existing platforms, like I mentioned before, and it enhances situational awareness, faster response time, better resource allocation. It increased the chance of apprehending suspects. It enhances employee and customer safety and trust. It's a force multiplier. Frontline supervisors will be able to view any situation prior to officers responding. The best part of this system, it allows us to access our partner agencies' systems. For example, Atlanta Police is currently using Futures. We'll be able to access over 2,000 camera system that is in their jurisdiction. Not only Atlanta Police Department, Fulton County, DeKalb County, Clayton County, Cobb County, and others. So once they are on the system, we'll be able to have access to their camera system to share information. One of the success stories with Futures was on May 3rd of 2023. That was the medical facility shooting down in Atlanta. After the suspect left the area, he was able to steal a vehicle from a nearby gas station. What Atlanta was able to do using Futures is to use Department of Transportation cameras, other agencies, and using Flock to be able to track that vehicle into Cobb County. And then with Cobb County also having Futures, they were able to share information and track the video. Within 8 hours, that suspect was apprehended and the lockdown was over for the city. The cost for the system, it is a contract of 60 months. It will cost $1.5 million. And we've also been awarded a grant from the Urban Area Security Initiative, which is UASI, it's part of Homeland Security, for $250,000. The total cost for the program is, again, it was $1.5 million. In summary, Acts on Futures will integrate with our current technology platforms. There is no DBE goal. This is a single source procurement. Contract length is 60 months. The Urban Area Initiative grant is $250,000, and we'll be able to apply for this grant 2 more times in the duration of the contract. Again, the total cost is $1.5 million. Our internal audit rating is low risk with a conclusion of fair and reasonable. This time, MARTA Police is respectfully requesting the authorization to enter a contract RFPPP 506 with Axon for the procurement of fuses in the amount of $1.5 million for 5 years. At this time, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Lieutenant Phillipson. Could I have a motion and a second, please? We have a motion that's been properly seconded. Any questions? Go in order. Mr. Dewart.
I believe APD uses fuses.
Yes, sir.
Is there any integration there, or are they completely separate?
They are completely separate, but using fuses will connect our system where we can share information. They will have access to what we give them access to, and they will give us access to the camera systems also.
Great. My second question is, the total cost is $1.5 million. Once we draw down that $250,000 grant, we're out $1.25 million?
1.2550, yes.
Then we have the opportunity to apply, and so it could come down even further.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Hardage?
Well, I'm for anything that makes our system safe and makes our staff safe, so I'm 100% behind this. I just have a question. Jim asked one of them. But currently today, we don't have a system that does this. Am I correct?
No, we don't.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Frison?
Yes, so the current technologies that you mentioned, like the drones and the flock, you have access to their database now, is that
Yes,
correct?
we do.
All right, so with having this larger umbrella, help me understand how do they fit into that larger umbrella? If I want to look at the flock camera, wouldn't I go into the flock camera site to look at theirs? So now you're saying I will go into this fuses platform to look at the camera that flock already has in the system?
Yes. What it does, it basically bring everything that we currently have into
Right.
one umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be able to access our Genetech, we'll be able to access our flat cameras in that same system. We don't have to go to a different login, a different system for it.
Okay, so this gives you different portals in that system where you can just automatically go to one place and see different.
Yes.
And then we'll open up visibility to other people's camera systems too.
Yes, it does.
That's what's nice about it. Okay,
That's
thank
the
you.
advantage.
All right, appreciate it.
Mr. Worthy?
Lieutenant, this is kind of an open-ended question, but with AI coming into medicine, policing, every aspect of our life, does this company, have they convinced you guys that they're on the cutting edge of that and will be able to bring that to bear by being contracted with them? Has that been any part of those conversations?
Yes, that has been discussed, and with AI technology, they are able to integrate. For example, Genetech is moving to where they have more AI capabilities. They'll be able to integrate with Fuchsias.
Okay. Ms. Scott?
Does this also incorporate the ability for telecom? For instance, if there was an emergency, the police departments have a separate ability to access telecom. If we couldn't use our phones, there is also a separate for the police departments. Does this incorporate that in any way?
No, it will not incorporate telecom. However, this will incorporate our CNC app. For example, we'll be able to send that link to customers, and they'll be able to share any videos of any incident that is real time.
Okay. But what I'm talking about is, for instance, if there was a problem with the tower
Okay.
or a satellite, and we, on our system, could not access it, there is a separate for emergency service for police departments. Does this incorporate that in any way?
It will be with our CAD system, as far as or what we call a communication system. They'll be able to integrate. That will be integrated within Fuchsias, so they will be able to communicate with officers.
Thank you.
Okay. See, there are no other questions. Can we please vote? The motion passes. Under other matters, we have 4 items. The key indicator report that you can review for information only. 2 other items where we will be using a state contract to purchase specialty vehicles. And then the last item, George Wright is going to lead a discussion about some of the operational issues that we had during the Pride weekend and the parade, and some of the thoughts they have going forward. George?
Thank you, Chair Pond and Mr. Greenwood, for the opportunity to come before the committee. Now, before Deputy Chiefs Jorge Bernard and Daniel Heck approach to speak to issues involving rail service delivery, along with power and signaling matters, I do have a few remarks to make. To start, the operations team is disappointed and sorry for the unsatisfactory customer experiences that occurred during the Pride weekend. Now, while we did use additional trains to support the parade, we also experienced an unexpected power issue that created significant delays on the north-south lines. Furthermore, in hindsight, performing wayside work in 2 sections of the north side line, they just were not helpful for this specific weekend. Now, that said, we recognize the increased necessity to better anticipate what could occur as we conduct our service delivery and maintenance activities. Now, as an operations team, we are fully aware of the fact that the region and MARTA will continue to be on the national and global stage in the coming months as we host mega events. The operations team will meet these big events and our everyday service with the level of planning, preparation, and execution that we've come to expect and that the community deserves. Now you will hear from both Jorge and Daniel on the findings, corrective actions, and new processes that we have implemented to prevent outcomes similar to those experienced during the Pride weekend. Jorge?
Good morning. As Mr. Wright stated, my name is Jorge Bernard, Interim Deputy Chief for the Rail Operations. I'm responsible for the rail service that we provided, and as Mr. Wright stated, I do apologize for the inconvenience that our customers experienced during the weekend of the Pride events. A couple of things that we learned, and that we'll be making changes, and we have already made some changes moving forward. Number one, for the Pride activity events moving forward, there will be no single tracking. We have added that to our track allocation. Therefore, moving forward, anytime that we have this type of event, we will not be doing any single tracking, and we'll focus more on providing more service than we did on the last Pride events that we had a couple weekends ago. We did prepare to insert additional service during the Pride events, and that service was actually utilized to try to recover the service once we had the power failure that we had. So we did have the third wheel power that was de-energized in one section of tracks, and then try to recover that. Our service was delayed for quite some time. Worst case scenario, some customers have to wait for 2 additional trains because we do lose some service delivery coming out of Dorville coming southbound, and we did have to stop service going northbound, which affected a lot of the customers trying to get to the event. The unfortunate piece that we learned in this particular event is that happened at the worst possible time that it could have happened. It happened at the beginning of when the majority of the customers were trying to go to the event, which started at approximately 9:26 in the morning. And that's when we anticipated the increase in revenue service or in the ridership for that event was approximately 10 a.m. So a couple of things that we're looking forward and that we're going to be moving forward, we're going to start doing. Number one, like I said, is we're not going to be doing any single tracking during this particular event moving forward. We're going to focus on communicating better with our customers to make sure that we push that information the moment that we experience the service interruptions, that we're going to start pushing that information not only internally but externally to our customers as well. That way we can set the expectation of the customer what to expect coming into a service. And this is whether it's a regular, normal day of operation or during any special events. The second thing that we're looking at is we're reevaluating how we respond to the service interruptions, and when we redeploy, what we call redeploy staffing to those locations that are being affected, whether it's single tracking or if we have to establish a bus bridge, and maintain those people there until we are completely clear of that event, and making sure that all our platforms and all our customers are moving according to what we expect them to be moving to those events. One of the things that we're going to look is also instituting and activating what we call Market Connect. That is to give the customers the ability to find alternate means of transportation, whether that's Uber or Lyft. And we're going to activate that the moment that we see that that particular interruption is going to cause delays going towards the 20-minute mark. But we're going to implement that before it gets to that mark. We're not going to wait until the 20 minutes. We're going to implement that right away. And if it gets to the 20-minute delays, they have that option to immediately choose an alternate means of transportation. Another thing that we're looking at doing moving forward is try to provide tabletop exercises. That's going to be for our field employees and our service control center. So that way we can quickly react to different scenarios. As you may anticipate, there's anything can happen in our system at any time that may cause any type of delays. So we want to be better prepared to respond to those events and be able to provide better service and quickly respond to get our service back on track. And lastly, one thing that we already started doing last Friday, is to do a briefing with Mr. Wright as well, to go over what events we have and what activities are going over that weekend. We do that internally, but now we're escalating that to his level as well, so that we can brief him on what our plans are for the weekend, what events are planned for that weekend, and to make sure that our plans are appropriate for those weekend's events. And at this time, I'll turn over to Mr. Daniel Heck, Deputy Chief of Mechanical Officer.
Good morning. I'm Daniel Hecht. I'm the Deputy Chief Mechanical Officer. As George mentioned, we experienced 2 failures in our maintenance of waste systems. The first was an activation of the emergency trip station, and that is a system that removes traction power from the wayside. When rail control attempted to restore the third rail power remotely via the rail control center in Chambly, the system did not function as designed, and technicians had to manually reset those breakers out in the field, which took some time. What we found is an incorrect configuration in the software that controls the field equipment. That has since been resolved at that location, and our team is testing other locations to ensure this configuration error does not exist elsewhere. The second failure occurred later in the day, starting in the afternoon. This was a failed wire in our train control system, which caused signaling delays of the trains. Technicians discovered a failed neutral wire, which caused intermittent signaling issues and ultimately a hard system failure during troubleshooting. Of note, troubleshooting a failure on a neutral wire in our train control rooms is technically challenging and can be time-consuming. Once technicians identified the failed wire, it was immediately bypassed and replaced, and the system returned to service. The train control rooms are inspected monthly, and this type of failure is extremely rare and has not occurred in this train control room or other train control rooms in the last 12 months. I'd like to note that MARTA's signaling system is designed to be fail-safe, and it resorted to the safest train operating condition during this failure. Mr. Wright, Mr. Bernard, and I will take any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. George, any questions for George?
I do.
Okay, we have Katie Powers first.
First, I don't see it noted on the agenda or published, so that is a point of concern as to who we have notified that this was going to be a briefing. So I just want to note that. I've got several questions. First, I appreciate the briefing, but it certainly seems retroactive that, quote, for this event now we're going to not do single tracking. It seems to me we've got the ability, as we just saw extensive data presented about the SEC Championship ridership with the Indian Creek Station. So what is the process, or is there one, that we have in place to identify events where we're going to see an increased ridership? That's my first question.
Yes, we do have we have a frequent cadence of engagements internally to discuss the numerous events that we have that would dictate how we should ramp up service, escalate service, and we balance that with things that we need to do on our wayside, particularly to make sure that we maintain a state of good repair.
Okay, what is the criteria that qualifies for something that would outweigh that?
All right, so you're going to look at forecasted attendance. We're definitely going to cite and look at what has historically happened with these events over the years, and make a decision that will allow us to service that event with the best possible customer experiences while also getting that work done. Where we erred, and we definitely erred in this regard, was that we didn't fully appreciate this, the scale of this event, particularly when we decided to do wayside work in 2 sections of the north-south line. The power outage was, was obviously unexpected. As Jorge has indicated, we fully appreciate the scale and the popularity of this event, and this particular event has been added to a list similar to a list that that would include the Atlanta United, the Falcons games, the SEC championship, where we would not be doing that type of work anymore, or signal tracking.
If I may,
sure.
I think what we might want to hear about is the attendance. There are larger events where the organization seems to understand that it's all hands on deck and clear the tracks, and then there are other events. What was the determining factor that left this event with less attention than some of the larger events?
And that's really my follow-up. We talk about, popularity of the event. If this was such an increase in numbers, how do we not see that coming? Or are the numbers the same and just our process was broken to it, is my direct question.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. The forecasted attendance for this was, I think, around 10,000. I think, as Kali indicated, many of our other events have larger numbers than that. I think we're still fully trying to flesh out what that real attendance was. I think you heard from Mr. Patterson earlier. There are definitely some struggles right now, particularly on the rail side, when it comes to determining what the ridership is. But yes, many of these events that we have supported for years are larger than 10,000. I don't know, how many trains does it typically take for us to kind of clear a 10,000 attendance event? Just from your experience.
Depending on what the event is and how spread out that event is. Like, I'll give you an example. If there's an event at Mercedes-Benz where everybody's coming at once into 2 stations, we'll add typically at least 5 to 6 trains to compensate for that additional increase in service at the end of those type of events. For this particular event, we had already anticipated to add 3 additional trains to the service.
Okay, and when we're talking about something starting at a direct time, I mean, the parade starts at a direct time. So
Correct.
Did the 10,000 anticipated, I'm going to go back to my question, I'm not trying to be difficult, but did the 10,000 anticipated riders result in any specific change or discussion internally with MARTA?
Yes, it did. And we had anticipated that, and we were planning to add 3 additional trains on the north-south line, which we ended up using those additional trains. But we didn't add them in between the service that we had already established, because at the time that we had the outage or the power issues, then we were using those trains to try to recover the service.
Okay, well, that brings me to my next question. How long does it take to place a bus bridge in place once a problem is identified?
That problem is it's very tricky, and it's very difficult to establish a bus bridge. A bus bridge is established once we have an issue or an outage in between 2 sections or 2 train stations. Then we contact bus communication and have our partners in bus to provide the buses. Those buses are coming from an existing route. So
Right.
we're taking buses from a route and diverting them to the location where we need to establish that bus bridge. So that's going to take some time, depending on where those buses are coming from and what type of service we have at that particular time.
And I appreciate the difficulty. How long would it have taken to place a bus bridge in place here, and why was one not put in place?
On the bottom side, probably close to about half an hour to start seeing the first buses arriving. And depending on what the length and the duration of it is and how many additional buses we may have, it may take us up to probably closer to an hour to get it fully established.
And how long were the delays? Did that exceed the time that could have been taken to put a bus bridge in place?
And in this particular event, we actually were able to bring power on one side of the track, so we started single tracking. So we were able to get the passengers moving using one side of the tracks only, which was faster than getting the bus bridge established.
And how long did that take?
The first train that was, when the power was de-energized, was at 9:26, and I believe we got the power up at 10:02.
Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Worthy?
I really appreciate y'all doing this. I sent an email when this issue came up. I share the same concern about this being noticed, because quite frankly, I would like for our customers to hear this conversation, and I think y'all were exactly correct, setting the tone, starting with an apology, and I really appreciate that. But I think the board needed answers. I think the public needs answers. So, Stephen, I don't know, Stephanie or whatever, I think all these are taped, but this may need to get out in this conversation and in explanation. This may need to get out to our customers and our consumers. This is more of a observation that a question will come, but I don't think anybody fully appreciates how hard it is to run trains and buses. We do. I applaud y'all for doing your job, and there are all these unanticipated things that pop up, and running trains and buses is very, very difficult. But there's also you lose your first impression on the very first exposure, and we are in a climate of trying to get ridership back to pre-pandemic levels, and a first impression, I worry about how many first impressions we lost on Pride Weekend. And I will use the Notre Dame Georgia Tech game as an example because I personally attended it. There was a bus bridge here because of an accident on the track. I actually hitched a ride down to the stadium via automobile, but my daughter, wife, and I came back here where I was parked by train after the game. And I think that a lot of our consumers, as big and spread out as Atlanta is, and as big and spread out as Pride is, may very well be taking one-way trips. Catch a ride down there by Uber or Lyft, catch a ride down there with friends, end up 2 stations down from where they arrived because they were walking the parade route or going into the park, and then the easiest way to get back is MARTA. So I know that y'all's algorithm focuses on people going to one place for big events, round trip patrons, but I think that especially events such as Pride, Streets Alive, whatever it may be, that are kind of roaming events. I don't know how you capture this, but I think we need to be looking at one-way passengers, because I think that a lot of times that comes up and is most convenient. And then to kind of follow up on what y'all discussed in what Chair Powers' questions are, it sounds like you have a system, but I think that we need to have a little bit more conversation about how we anticipate the community's calendar, the community that we serve calendar. I mean, I've lived here all my life. The Atlanta calendar is pretty predictable. July 4th, Peachtree Road Race. September or October, Pride. New Year's events. How do we anticipate the city's calendar? Because I think we need to view this more than singular events focused at a big stadium or focused at State Farm. And I think we need to be thinking more about the calendar of what goes on in the city.
Let me, before you do, George, there is an ongoing cadence of communication between MARTA and the city in terms of what their annual events are. You're right, you named a few of them. We are well aware of what the major events are. We're also aware that there are times when new interests introduce new events, and it's even though it'd be good if they communicated, engage with MARTA up front, it's our responsibility to find out what they are and engage with them. So we are doing that. We've started a closures, events, and diversions team that their goal is to put their arms around the community in terms of what's next. What are you thinking about, whether it's a reverse Peachtree road race and all these new things that are cropping up, and trying to educate the community that we, as George said at the beginning, we still have critical required maintenance that we have to do, but let's work together to make sure that happens. So that regular table is one thing, and then what Jorge alluded to earlier was every Friday at noon now we have a weekend look ahead just to remind the C-suite about, we may all be thinking about different things, but this event, this document pulls together to say, let's not forget that the community is doing A, B, and C this particular weekend. So as we make decisions on the fly, we keep those events foremost in our minds.
One last follow-up question. And this is just for personal knowledge. How long does it take to get a train out of Armour Yard and add it to service if you're supplementing a train? Is that, or adding trains to a line, is that something that must be done at 4 in the morning before service starts? Or is that something that you can call down there and do pretty quickly? That's just something I don't know, because like I said, I know that running trains and buses is difficult.
Yeah, it's dependent on the availability of operators. So, and if we have available operators, to include maybe operators that are primarily making yard moves, you can do that almost instantaneously.
So it's more about someone to drive the train than moving the train?
Yes.
Okay. One other comment, you use the word fail-safe. I don't think any system is fail-safe. So my only closing comment is that you, on these big events, you just have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. But there's no system that's 100% fail-safe.
I believe, Chair Pond, that the fail-safe reference was more to when the system isn't acting as it's designed, then it defaults to stop as opposed to trying to implement go.
That's correct. When we have intermittent failures on the signaling system, the system automatically drops to where it assumes there is a train at every location, so all the signals go to red. Those red signals are the dark signals as a result of that wire failure. That's what caused the delay. So in the safest mode of operation, trains had to proceed past red signals or through dark areas under limited speed, which caused those delays.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, that's all of the items on the agenda, and we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.